Hello. Welcome to You Still Matter, supporting your UCSC students' transition to college. I'm Elisa Worland, and I'm joined here with Emily Giovanelli, and we both work for SHOP, which is Student Health Outreach and Promotion, and we're health educators. So as I said, I'm Elisa Worland. I'm the alcohol and other drug health educator of the SHOP, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail in a moment. I've been at UCSC for about a year now. I have my master's in social work from Portland State University with a focus on community-based practice. I previously worked in mental health with adults experiencing severe and persistent mental illness, usually with concurrent substance use issues. And I also served in the Peace Corps in Paraguay, where I did a lot of educational programming on sexual and reproductive health with youth in middle school and high school. At UCSC, I oversee our Parity Save team and our Slug Love teams. And I'm going to hand it over to Emily here.
Hi, everyone. So happy you could join us today. My name's Emily. I'm the mental health educator at SHOP. I have worked for UCSC for 3 years now, and I'm also an alum. I graduated from here in 2017, and after working for 2 years and getting my master's in public health and social work from the University of Michigan, I returned to my alma mater. I worked with young people in a variety of contexts, including summer camps, school-based health centers, alternative education systems, and higher education. And I oversee our mental health promotion team, which is called Shop Talk, and our Slug Love team with Elisa. So we'll talk a little bit about our office before we dive into our topic today. We are a division of the Student Health Center, but we're physically located at a place on campus called Porter College. We are the outreach branch of the Student Health Center, and we're really, really active on campus. We have 18 peer educators who help us host events, facilitate workshops, and make social media for the office. And while we are a part of the Student Health Center, we don't take insurance, and all of our services are free. So students do not need UC Ship or Cruise Care to access our office or any of our services. And SHOP is a place for students to go to learn about health and wellness in a really safe and non-judgmental environment. We provide opportunities for students to explore and enhance their health and wellness as they pursue their academic goals. And so our philosophy at SHOP is unconditional positive regard. And this means that we and all of our peer educators are friendly and supportive always to any student who comes into our office. We know that everyone is trying their best to figure out their health. This health and wellness isn't something that we are innately born with. We have to figure it out as we go along. And we know that everyone is doing their best to figure it out. We support any steps, no matter how small, a student takes to prevent STIs, unintended pregnancies, substance use related harms, including alcohol. We don't judge, we only offer support, information, and referrals. We never tell students what they should or shouldn't do, and we celebrate students who are taking care of themselves. And we're here to support students no matter what, and you are too. And that's why you've joined us this evening. And so we're really excited to talk to you tonight about why you still matter and how you can best support your student at UCSC. Having your slugs start college is really hard for them and for yourself. And it's sometimes hard to identify what normal behavior can look like in college. So tonight we want to talk to you about what adolescent development can look like in college, some information about the first few weeks, and how you can best support your slug. So researchers at the MIT Raising Teens project have identified 10 tasks of adolescent development. And something we want to make really clear is that there's no ages when these things should happen. Adolescence typically takes place from age 10 to 19, but many researchers are actually working to expand that range all the way up to 24 years old, because that's when the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is in charge of executive functions, is fully developed. So all that to say, some of your students have maybe already experienced these tasks, and some of them will experience them at UCSC, and some might not experience them until after they graduate, and all of those things are okay. So some of the tasks that might happen while they're at UCSC include adjusting to sexually maturing bodies and feelings. So students might become interested in dating and sex for the first time. They have to learn how to manage their sexual feelings and engage in healthy sexual behaviors. So this it can include establishing a sexual identity and developing skills for romantic relationships. They also tend to start developing and applying abstract thinking skills. So they're introduced to new topics in college via their friends, classes, and they begin to think about possibilities, plan ahead, and construct new philosophies. They also start to develop a new perspective on human relationships. So students are often at college introduced to people with backgrounds different than their own. So they learn things about the people in the world around them. And they use this new ability to resolve problems and conflicts. We also see students develop and apply new coping skills in areas like decision making, problem solving, and conflict resolution. So begin to think and plan for the future, engage in sophisticated strategies for decision making, problem solving, and try to moderate their risk taking to serve their goals rather than jeopardize them. And they also identify meaningful moral standards, values, and belief systems. So they might start to question beliefs from childhood and adopt more personally meaningful values. And then the last 5 tasks of adolescent development, students begin to start and begin to understand and express more complex emotional experiences. So they're able to identify and compete and communicate more complex emotions. They'll form friendships that are mutually close and supportive. Your slug is going to have to make new friends when they get to UCSC. And often we see a shift from friendships based on shared activities and interest to those based in sharing ideas, feelings, and mutual trust and understanding. They're also going to be establishing key aspects of their identity. And finding your identity is an ongoing process. It's not going to stop once they graduate from college, but it tends to start to flourish while students are in college. And that might mean developing a positive identity around gender, physical attributes, sexuality, ethnicity, and while as being sensitive, and in addition to that, being sensitive to the diversity of groups that make up our society. They're also going to have to start to meet the demands of increasingly mature roles and responsibilities so they can learn to acquire skills, manage the multiple demands that allow them to move into working, as well as meet expectations regarding commitment to family and community. And then finally, there might be some renegotiating relationships with adults in parenting roles. And so this is a time for adults and students to work together to negotiate a change in their relationship that balances that autonomy and ongoing connection that we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to pass it off to Elisa to talk about the first couple of weeks of school.
Yeah, so the data's mixed on this, but there's research suggesting that the first 6 weeks or even first year of college is kind of the most risky for students in terms of harms related to alcohol, drug use, sexual assault, and other risky behaviors. And why is that? So there's a lot of reasons why this is a more risky time. Students are in a new place and they might have some friends, but they just met them and they don't know them well. They don't know to what degree their friends are going to look out for them. They aren't allowed to drink legally, so they might be trying alcohol for the first time, but they may not know how alcohol affects them yet or what their limits are. And they might not know what a standard serving size of alcohol is. They often want to avoid getting in trouble for drinking, so they might do a bunch of shots in a friend's room before going out. But they may also find themselves having more later, and this can be a recipe for alcohol poisoning. They may also be on different footing from each other in terms of sexual and reproductive health education too. So according to the Guttmacher Institute, a think tank that works on reproductive rights, about half of adolescents, so 53% of females and 54% of males, reported between 2015 and 2019 that they received sex education that met the minimum standard articulated in Healthy People 2030. So that means half of our students have actually learned something about sexual and reproductive health, and the other half have been left to fill in the gaps with porn and Cosmo and TikTok and things that they heard from their friends, which is totally reliable, right? Sexual reproductive health education can also vary widely state to state or even district to district. So you don't know what knowledge people are coming in with, but there is a need to do education to catch everyone up to speed so they can be safe. And we also find that in the home, sex education is oftentimes uneven. We find that oftentimes mothers are the ones sharing that information, that girls tend to get more information than boys, um, especially around sexual assault. And then also students haven't been always given the chance to think critically about sex education. They may not have given much thought to what role they want sex to have in their lives or what's their sexual project. They may not understand their rights in relationships or have a clear grasp on how to respect the sexual rights of others. They may know that no means no, but they may not understand that yes, that it was achieved through badgering and coercion is a no that's dressed up as a yes. Um, and these questions of consent become even murkier too if you add in the fact that students might be drinking for the first time, or they might be doing so to in hopes of hooking up because they've never learned how to have these conversations and they feel scary or shameful or uncomfortable. So what does that mean? So you have students that are learning how to have conversations about sex, what they want, what they don't want, using protection for the first time. They might not know much about alcohol, cannabis, or other substances. And they may not feel comfortable asking these questions too, because they don't want to be the person who doesn't know in their group of friends. Um, and we know these conversations can be really scary and uncomfortable as a caregiver or a parent, but they're really important. And coming from you, even if it doesn't seem like it, they are listening, they are watching you. So talking with them is very, very important, and not just with female students too. Talking with male students about how alcohol can lower your ability to read body language and to communicate about consent, or that it can make someone be more aggressive is really important too. And we do know that men can be subject to sexual assault and medical transports as well. So we know at SHOP that a lot of students haven't gotten this information because they come in and they ask us. But we also need your help too. So we're going to go over some talking points about how to have some of these conversations in general and how to maybe just more broadly converse with your student. So a few things that we like to talk about at SHOP. One is standard drink sizes. So a lot of students are unaware of this coming in. So there might be different volumes of liquid, but they may have certain amounts of alcohol. So 1.5 ounce of liquor at 40% is the same amount of alcohol as about 4 to 5 ounces of wine, which is about the same amount of alcohol in a 12-ounce beer. And there's some really great tools out there too for measuring drink size. So Rethink Your Drink through the NIH has an alcohol drink size calculator where you can put in the percent of alcohol and how much volume there is in there. But students oftentimes will get into trouble a few ways. One is mixed drinks. So some of you might remember going to college and finding jungle juice, which is some mixture of alcohol and lots of sweet stuff so that it doesn't taste super alcoholic. But it can really mess you up and you don't know how much alcohol is in it. We also find buzz balls are really popular, which are kind of canned drinks. And a buzz ball, a lot of students think that one can is a serving, but it actually contains 1.7 standard size drinks in there. Shots and drinking games are also something that you oftentimes see associated with medical transports here. So students are drinking too much, too fast. They lose track of how much they've had, and all of a sudden they're blacking out, which is dangerous. And then there's also been kind of this trend here in the US of Borgs, which stands for Blackout Rage Gallon, which typically contain about a fifth of vodka, water, and then some sort of liquid flavor enhancer, oftentimes some electrolytes, because people think that's going to keep them from getting messed up on that. Uh, but this is something that also can be really dangerous because it has a lot of alcohol. On the upside in the US, we are seeing a decrease in drinking amongst this age group in general, which is a good thing. But we do know a lot of students just don't know some basics about this. So this is something where you can offer some education to your student. We also talk a lot about negotiating consent. So we like to say that consent is freely given. So it's not coerced. It's not, oh, if you really loved me, you do this, or oh, come on, you know I need that. It's enthusiastic, so you want a heck yeah instead of a sure. It's ongoing and it's revocable. So I can decide that I'm not into this at any time and ask you to stop. Um, Hirsch and Kahn are some researchers that have done some really good work on sexual assault, consent with college students, and they describe this as sexual citizenship. So knowing my rights as a sexual being and knowing I need to respect the sexual rights of others. Some key facts you can share also with your students. Most slugs drink 0 to 4 drinks when they party. So if you're drinking outside of that, you're actually outside of the norm of what most students are drinking. And we find that norming campaigns are actually really helpful with students at this age. Almost close to 40% of slugs are non-drinkers or very occasional drinkers. So for those who might be going to college and they feel like everyone is drinking around them, that's not actually the case. There are a sizable number of folks who aren't drinking or they're just not into it. And that's okay. It might take them a little bit to find some of those friends. We have the Cove, which is our collegiate recovery program, and they do sober activities. There's a lot of ways to get involved. Another thing I hear a lot is a lot of people think that everyone's using cannabis. That's not true. Only about 40% of students actually use cannabis products, and it is not legal on campus, even if you have a medical card for that. So that's something else to keep in mind. Some other things too, most medical transports are due to students drinking too much too fast. So talking with students about avoiding shots, not playing drinking games. A few things that we like to tell people, go slow, alternate drinks with water. Don't let people top off your drink. If you don't feel like drinking, maybe hold a red Solo cup that's got water in it. You're less likely to have people try to foist alcohol on you then. Set a drink limit for yourself. Decide that you're going to drink X amount when you go out and no more than that. And again, avoiding drinking games, that is also an oft problem that tends to come up. And again, sharing that about consent. What does that look like? How do you know that you've got consent? Some other things that I would like to highlight too, we do have the responsible action plan here at UCSC. Um, so if medical assistance is sought for somebody, um, and they reach out to EMS or a university official like a RA, one of the community safety officers, police officer, for a student that is experiencing alcohol or some sort of like substance related medical emergency, and they cooperate with the emergency and university officials, then a conduct record is not generated. So we know a lot of students are sometimes hesitant to reach out for help if they're worried about a friend because they're worried about getting them in trouble and they're worried about getting in trouble themselves. But we do have this here that says a conduct record will not be generated if they follow these procedures here. Because UC Santa Cruz is more concerned about student safety than they are about getting people in trouble. So we really encourage you to mention this to your student about, hey, do you know this exists? Make sure that's something you tap into if you are worried about someone. We also have medical amnesty too if someone's a victim of sexual assault and they were under the influence at the time. Also similarly with hazing. But now we're going to get into how to support your slugs. So some things you might be looking for, some communication techniques. I'm going to hand it back to Emily here.
Yeah, so now that we have talked about common adolescent developmental tasks and some of the things that we as health educators often see on campus, we're going to talk about how we can support your slug. So when we're thinking about best supporting slugs, one key message we want to iterate is love and connect. So making sure that there's a supportive relationship because a supportive relationship supports your student. But what does this look like in actuality? It can look like expressing affection for them, either over the phone or in person. That should say expect increased criticism. So making sure you're strengthening your skills for discussing ideas with them. And then spending time just listening, making sure that you're listening more than you're advising. Treating your student as an individual, especially if they have siblings, making sure that it's you're again treating them as an individual distinct from either yourself and how you were when you went to college, what their siblings have done, and even their past, because college is a time for them to grow and evolve. Um, we also want to make sure that we're still balancing observation with your students' need for privacy. So learn and watch for warning signs of poor physical or mental health, which we'll talk a little bit about later. Making sure you're asking really open-ended questions. So asking, what are you enjoying most about school instead of are you enjoying your classes? We want to elicit answers that are going to give us more than a yes or no. When we think about types of support, practical support can look like sending them something. This doesn't have to be one of those huge care packages you're probably getting targeted Instagram ads for. It can even just be a postcard from their hometown, something to show that you're thinking about them. Making sure you're talking about finances, so being really open about budgeting and managing financial stress, and reminding them about the importance of physical health. For emotional support, again, listening more than you advise. Balancing communication. Sometimes you might only receive a single text message for the day, a good morning, or I'm doing okay, or my midterm went well. Um, Making sure you're validating their feelings. It's really normal for students to feel homesick or struggle while school is starting. UCSC is on the quarter system, and that means we have 10 weeks of instruction, so things go really fast. There are students who have midterms already in the next couple of weeks. And so a student struggling to get adjusted to the quarter system is really normal, and there is support for those students. And then campus support, knowing what resources are available will make it easier for you to guide your student to finding support on campus. And we're going to talk about how we can do that.
Yeah, so how do we start the conversation? So first of all, this isn't a one-time event. If you're truly going to talk to your students about drugs, alcohol, sex, relationships, just how they are in general, that needs to be ongoing. The more you create space for these conversations and make them feel like this is a normal part of your conversations, the more likely they're going to come to you if they need help or support. Um, Before you have a chat, check in with yourself. Maybe you discovered your student's been sneaking a vape into the house and you've made it clear that's not acceptable. Do you need time to calm down and come up with a game plan before approaching them? We want to be in a space where we're using our wise mind, not the reactive mind, or responding solely from a place of hurt or anger. If you're broaching a topic too that feels uncomfortable or scary, you might ask yourself, do I need more information on the topic so that I feel comfortable having this conversation? Am I scared or anxious about talking to my student about this, and need to deal with my feelings first? You might also consider what messages you received about the topic growing up. Maybe talking about sex and relationships was so taboo, you never had the chance to have that modeled for you. If you're uncomfortable, your student's going to pick up on that. So take some time to sit with your feelings and emotions and explore where those are coming from. And also look for opportunities to bring up topics. It doesn't need to be directly about a situation involving your student. So for example, you could say, I read in the news recently that nearly half of all new sexually transmitted infections each year are amongst young people, kind of 15 to 24. What do you think about that? I was surprised at how high that number was. So asking open-ended questions can give you the chance to see where they are in terms of their knowledge. Like, are STIs even on their radar? Their attitudes, their beliefs about the topic. It can give you the opportunity to correct misinformation as well and help them learn how to think critically about situations. And talk about other things in the news can feel less scary than asking them again directly. But this can be a good way to segue into how they're managing that topic in their life. And there's other ways to bring up things indirectly as well. Watch a movie together, and talk about it afterwards. Some other things you can do too, share your values and expectations and boundaries. You can still have rules in your house, such as they're not allowed to drink until they're 21, or that they need to let you know where they're going and with whom when they're staying with you. Emphasize though that even if they break the rules, you still love them and you want to help them if they get into a scrape. And they're going to make mistakes. That's part of learning. We should expect that. But they do need to know that they'll still be loved even if they fall short of your expectations. As Emily said too, we need to listen, like actually listen. Lecturing's not going to get you anywhere. So using reflective listening techniques to show that you caught what they're saying, such as, what I hear you saying is blah, 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 blah. Did I get that right? You can also name the emotion that you think's underlying what they're saying. That sounds like a really tough situation. I'd feel kind of anxious if it were me too. And not every conversation needs to be about tough topics. So getting to know their world, that'll make it easier to notice too if they do need support or assistance. So ask about what classes they're taking and how those are going. Inquire about their extracurricular activities. Ask them who they're hanging out with and what they're doing when they go out. With middle school and high school students, we know they're significantly less likely to use substances or engage in risky behaviors if they have to tell an adult where they're going and who they're with. College students are less influenced by parents, but you still matter and make a difference when you are asking about these things. So I know some of you are listening to this and you're like, oh God, I never talked to my slug about this before, or I'm a hypocrite. I did every drug under the sun as a college student. I don't want my kid to do that. Or you might also feel like you don't have the knowledge to talk about a topic. You can do this. It might be scary, but it's fine. So for example, what if you have a health behavior that you don't want your student to engage with, but maybe you do that? So for example, vaping or smoking. You can be real with them about the impacts it's had on you and why you don't want them to do that. So you can say, I know that I vape, but I wish I hadn't picked that up. It's hard to stop, it costs money, and it has X, Y, and Z health impacts, and I don't want that for you. Best case scenario is to show that you're trying to make an effort to stop the behavior yourself, but it can still be helpful to convey your values and expectations for your student. Some parents and caregivers worry that their student will ask a question that they can't answer, or they're not going to have enough information. And that's okay too. You don't have to know everything. Me and Emily don't know everything, and we work in the health outreach promotion office. But you can say, I don't know, let's look that up together, and then model how to find accurate health information online. You can also take time to read up on a topic so that you feel more prepared. There's great books, videos, websites on how to talk to your youth about sexual and reproductive health, healthy relationships, drugs and alcohol, vaping, mental health, and more. Having some stats or facts up your sleeve can also make you feel more prepared. But make sure you have accurate information, not just information designed to scare. So if you tell a student cannabis is going to ruin your life, they're going to look around and see clearly that's not the case for a number of people, and they're going to tune that out. But if you say some people enjoy cannabis, but we also know statistically that, makes it harder for some people to do well academically, and it can be hard for some people to stop. They're more likely to listen to that. And finally, it's never too late to start having these conversations. Like any new skill, it can feel really awkward at first. That's okay. The more you do it, the more it's going to feel normal. So just reach out to your student, keep trying. You can reach out to other parents, other friends for ideas as well.
So, what are average student behaviors that might come up that you're wondering, is this normal or is this okay? Um, so kind of a summary of everything we've talked about today. Your slug is going to be meeting new people, which is really, really exciting. Um, they also might have trouble making friends. We do want to emphasize that it is week 2 going into week 3. And we hear this every year of students who say, oh my gosh, I haven't made any friends yet. I see people walking around campus with big groups of people. Um, and this is a really average experience for folks. Students are still getting adjusted to UCSC. Maybe they're not quite clicking with their roommates. And so having trouble making friends is not necessarily cause for concern, especially in the first couple of weeks of fall quarter when they just started. We do want them to be trying new things though, so maybe they're going to take a surfing class. UCSC has its own harbor, so tell your student to check out our physical education classes. They can do ocean kayaking, learn how to sail a boat, really cool stuff. They might be auditioning for a school play, even though they've never had any interest in theater before. They're joining a new club. As we've talked about today, they might be trying substances for the first time. Feeling homesick is definitely a common occurrence amongst students. And then just struggling in general. College is a really hard adjustment for a lot of people, and struggling isn't always a red flag. It might be a sign of growth for your student. But we can talk about what red flags might come up that you just want to be on the lookout for. So changes in academic performance or behavior. So this could look like skipping class frequently, maybe a change in attitude towards classes. That's why we talk about these conversations need to be ongoing, and we want you to learn your students' world. So if at one point in the quarter they're saying, "Oh my gosh," my bio class is really, really great. I'm having a wonderful time. Like I'm learning so much. And then suddenly their attitude changes towards the end of the quarter, learning a little bit more about what's going on. Physical signs, maybe looking disheveled or really fatigued, a lack of energy, not sleeping well, possibly sleeping too much on the flip side of that, and then really excessive weight loss or weight gain. Social red flags would be withdrawal from friends and family, not attending events, spending a lot of time alone and not leaving their room. And then emotional would look like feelings of depression or expressing harm to self or others. And so we're going to talk about a couple of resources we have on campus so that you can know what's available to you and how you can guide your student towards those resources. So the first one we'll talk about is our office shop. Again, we're located at Porter College, so not in the Student Health Center. And we offer one-on-one wellness coaching for students. And so this is an opportunity for students to talk to one of us about anything related to health and well-being. And this can include adjusting to UCSC, sleep hygiene, procrastination, anything to do with sexual and reproductive health, dating, and then alcohol and other drugs. So this is a free service, again, because students do not need UC SHIP. And we always say that we're never the wrong door for students to enter. So if they come in and we're not the right person to help them, we'll get them connected to the right resources. So CAPS is our counseling and psychological office. They are also part of the Student Health Center. And many students access CAPS for a variety of things, including stress, anxiety, academic pressures, relationship concerns, identity exploration, trauma, and adjusting to UCSC. And their goal is to support mental health and overall well-being so students can thrive personally and academically. CAPS is free regardless of UC SHIP status as well. There are limited sessions that a student can utilize for CAPS, but their first session with a CAPS counselor will be an intake session so they can learn a little bit more about what the student is looking for. And then it might include a referral to an off-campus therapist. And so we talked a little bit about red flags and warning signs for a student. CAPS does offer consult and support for families if you believe that your student is in distress. So you can call the CAPS office and they can talk you through what's going on. We also have a campus mobile crisis team, and this is a division of CAPS, and it provides timely, accessible, and culturally responsive support to individuals experiencing behavioral health crises. So this is not for students whose toilet is overflowing in their dorm. This is for mental health emergencies. So they offer on-site emotional wellness checks, connections to behavioral health resources, coordination with CAPS or other services. Responsive crisis support, and then response to mental health crises, substance use concerns, and other situations. So the phone number is right here if you want to take a picture of it and send it to your slug to have them put it in their phone. There are limited hours right now, so if they would call and mobile crisis team isn't running at that time, they'll be transferred to dispatch. And it is only for on-campus students. So, how can we encourage our students to use these resources? Let's talk about it. Because your slug is an adult, which means that they do need to reach out for resources themselves. So, for example, if you know that your slug has gone out to a party Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, you might be a little concerned about that. But a parent cannot email Elisa and say, "Hi, my student's been partying a lot. I'm really concerned. Can you please reach out and talk to them?" We do not have the ability to do that. But what you can do is making sure you're having that open communication with your slug, asking them how their weekend was, if there's anything that they would have wanted change, and reminding them about shop services. So you can express concern about partying and offer information, understanding that not every student is going out every night. But we know that seeking support and using resources can feel really scary for students, especially when they're dealing with really stigmatized topics like loneliness, substance use, sex and relationships, and mental health. So, empowering your student to use these resources can assure them that asking for help is an acceptable thing to do. So, reminding them that these resources on campus exist because students need them. The Student Health Center exists because students need health and wellness services. CAPS exists because students need to talk to therapists. Basic needs exist because sometimes you need help with anything related to housing or anything under the sun, food support, anything like that. Reminding them that asking for help is a strength. We want to encourage students to know that asking for help and reaching out for resources is not a weakness. It's something a skill that they can grow and build. And then finally, reminding them that you're providing this information and resources because you care about them and that their well-being is important to you. Obviously, they're in school to earn their academic degree, but if what they're dealing with on their academic load is too much for them and it's affecting their well-being needs to come first. So letting them know that you support them no matter what. We are a college campus, which means we have so many resources that it would be a whole other webinar to go over them. And so we have a couple of QR codes here for you. The Slug Family's website is going to be your one-stop shop for resources. So the page that I linked takes you directly to campus resources that you can browse through. And we also want you to check out the Families Hub where you can access even more information about things ongoing at UCSC. I've also linked our Student Health Services website. So this is for questions about UC SHIP, same-day clinic, CAPS, psychiatry, our pharmacy, care, which is our sexual assault prevention and education wing, and then the Cove, which is our recovery space on campus. And then finally, like I just said, students are here to earn their degree. Academics are very, very important to our students, and sometimes students get really overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have to do, especially on a quarter system. So I have linked Learning Support Services. This is our tutoring center on campus. They also offer workshops on how to read your syllabus, how to do time management, and more. And something if your student starts talking about, like, my class is really hard, I'm really struggling with this, encourage them to reach out to Learning Support Services. Many of our classes that are really, really challenging for students, so our heavy STEM classes, organic chemistry, things like that, have Learning Support Services tutor groups already attached to the class. And this is all student-led tutoring, so it's students who have taken the class in previous quarters and have come back to be tutors. So it's a really, really great resource on campus. And that is all we have. So I believe we are going to open it up to Q&A. We would love to answer any questions that you all have. Yes, so the recording, the presentation was recorded, and I believe it will be on Slugs Hub in a couple of days. You're so welcome.
We have a question about did the students also have such a session? We do slugs care, which is a session where we go over topics around sexual assault, drugs and alcohol. They are also required to do alcohol EDU when they're coming to school, and that goes over a number of things about standard drink size, how alcohol and drugs impact you, how that impacts consent. So they're getting some of that information as we go along. We also have a question about what is the Cove? The Cove is our collegiate recovery program. So they offer different recovery groups. They do sober activities with students. Looking through some of the questions here.
Maybe you can answer the question about UC SHIP and just what it is.
Yes, UC SHIP is insurance that students can have through the campus. And they are very welcome to use insurance that their parents have or a caregiver. But they do have more options available to them on campus through the Student Health Center if they have UC SHIP instead of private pay. Um, some questions about RA involvement. RAs are there to support students who are on their floor. They are students themselves too, so they do get a pretty extensive amount of training. But we do encourage students to approach their RAs if they're having an issue. There are CREs, which supervise the RAs, and that's another level that students could go to if they feel like they're not getting their needs met through their RA. I do see some about sleep issues too. If students are having issues with sleep, I know that's a topic Emily gets a lot in her office. So we do have available earplugs, and we can also talk about ways to negotiate that too with roommates. Because it is kind of hard if you're living on your own for the first time. Maybe you haven't had a roommate before. So kind of figuring out how to manage those dynamics as well. Emily, do you want to take a question?
Yes, I'm trying to type at the same time. Let me see. There's one question that says, is alcohol sold on campus? We do have one cafe called Cafe Iveta that does sell beer and wine, but students are carded with their ID. And it is only open, I believe, 9 to 5. Um, Someone is asking about information for a psychologist and a nutritionist. The best way to get in touch with a psychologist is to have your student call CAPS, which I can put their phone number in the chat. And then for a nutritionist, so we do not currently have a nutritionist on staff at the Student Health Center, but students can talk to their primary care provider about anything related to nutrition.
There's a good question in here about you commented maybe you only get one text in a day from your slug. We're not texting with our slug every day. What's a healthy range of contact with your kid, allowing independence but staying supportive? That kind of depends a bit on your kid. I know I personally, when I was in college, I probably talked to my parents every few weeks. And I was a pretty independent person. I know there are other folks that talk to their parents daily. I think that depends a little bit on your kid, your relationship. Some might need more contact, some might not need that as much. You might also see though that that shifts a little bit as the quarter goes on. We were talking about this a little bit before hopping on the webinar that your first few weeks are really exciting. There's a lot of new stuff going on. You're just starting classes. You just got to campus. You're making new friends. And then partway through the quarter, all of a sudden you're in midterms. Those habits of your roommate that didn't seem like a big deal at the beginning are now driving you crazy. Um, so you might see some shifts too throughout the quarter as things get busier. The honeymoon period with the roommate kind of disappears, and maybe there's a bit more adjustment issues coming up. So just keep trying to connect with your student. Don't force it. Um, and just try to stay involved with their lives, but know that they're going through a lot of changes right now. They might need a little bit more space to explore currently, but they might be in contact more too as things start to feel a little bit more rough. Um, Got a question too about eating disorder support. There are a lot of groups through CAPS, so we'd recommend checking out their website to see what's available.
I will put the hours for shop in the chat so everyone can have them. This was the first next question I saw. Is there a nearby resource for sending a surprise gift of late night cookies and milk for a study break? I believe we do have an insomnia cookies, so you can Google that. That's the main one that I know about. But we also have a ton of restaurants downtown, super close to campus. So I believe that door dashing shouldn't be too much of an issue. And I'm sure your students would appreciate it.
Yeah. Someone's asked about, do RAs proactively check on students on their floor? Do students have to reach out first? RAs are supposed to make contact a couple of times in the quarter with each student that's assigned to them. So there should be some proactive engagement, and then they're also hosting events too with their floors to offer some spaces for folks to get to know each other as well. I've heard about the W effect of freshmen's emotions, happy at the beginning and then decreasing before winter break and into spring. Does that seem in line with what you see too? Emily, you want to take that since you're mental health?
Where was the question?
I've heard about the W effect of freshman emotions, happy at beginning, then decreasing before winter break and in spring. Does that seem in line with what you see too?
Yeah, definitely. Especially on the quarter system, like I said, the quarter system goes really fast. So students might be expecting their first midterms to start in just maybe within the next 2 weeks. Things might get really chaotic. There also just might be that kind of starting school really excited, and then maybe part of the way through realizing that the people that they met welcome week aren't their forever friends and having to start over. Um, Starting to feel homesickness, getting excited to go home for winter break. So things do fluctuate depending on the time of the quarter. So definitely just checking in with your student, especially if they start talking about midterms and finals, and making sure that they have all those resources they need. I was going to ask, what suggestions do you have for students living off campus to stay connected? That's a great question. We really highly recommend they follow Instagram accounts of offices and colleges that they're connected with so they can know what events are happening on campus. Um, and then always reaching out for help, trying to come onto campus as often as they can, just getting really acquainted with campus. I'm assuming it might be like a transfer student who's living off campus for the first time. And so making sure that they're really connected to all of those resources and events because we have a ton of them. But they like most often happen during the week, so making sure that student is up to date with them.
We had a question too about my student's 21-year-old and a first-year transfer. He's tried to get his academic career going at two other campuses. How do we motivate our students to find a way through the struggle of adapting and giving themselves a chance to succeed? So yeah, there's a lot of resources on campus. So I think kind of I think with someone who maybe's tried this before and has had some struggles, maybe talking with them about what might you try differently this time, if you've struggled with it at previous campuses. And maybe being more proactive too about trying to connect with resources. Don't wait until things start to get hairy. Try to reach out now and get connected up so that you have those supports in place early on. And there's a lot of different support options here. We've got resource centers for different cultural groups. We have slug support, which can offer financial assistance if a student is struggling or has some crisis that comes up. Um, we have on-campus food pantries. There's a lot of things here, so some of it's just taking a moment to look around, see what's out there. I really recommend you check out the DSAS, uh, Division of Student Affairs and Success website, because there's a really good page on there with different resources that are available here on campus. You can kind of narrow it down by topic.
Someone asked how many sessions can a slug use at CAPS per year or per quarter before they're referred to an off-campus therapist? That's a great question. So our CAPS office operates on a brief intervention therapy model, which means that students get a limited amount of sessions per academic year. We know that students typically use between 1 and 4 per academic year. If a student is interested in therapy that's a little bit more long term, then CAPS can help them get connected off campus.
We also have a question here. Does SHOP offer support groups for students around various topics? For example, adjusting, loneliness. So we don't offer support groups, but we do workshops, and we also have peer educators. So Emily and myself, as well as our peers, will offer sessions either in classes. We may have workshops that people can drop into. We oftentimes partner with other offices. And then our students are also tabling across campus. So they may have activities or educational topics around, yeah, loneliness, anxiety, substances, sexually reproductive health. So they're out and about. And we also have some options too. Someone asked if we have like a peer-to-peer counseling program. We do have peer educators that offer education on birth control. So oftentimes, for example, a student may go to their doctor and they'll get like 10, 15 minutes tops on the topic, but we have students who can sit down and spend like an hour with somebody going through the different options and what's out there and kind of really help them drill down on what they might be looking for. What's the difference between SHOP and CAPS? So we're the outreach wing of the Student Health Center. So we're offering education, workshops, tabling. CAPS does counseling. So they have counseling, psychiatry through that office, so they're doing the clinical piece there. So students can come in for wellness coaching with us, so we can talk about what's going to therapy look like, or we can also do some assessment to see where they're at with their use, because we do have students who will come in who are concerned about their cannabis use, for example, and think maybe they need to cut back, and we can kind of look at that and say, okay, like we can work together, or hey, it looks like you're using a lot and maybe you need more support because these other things are coming up. Maybe that's CAPS might be a better fit for you.
Yes, we also had a question asking if students have access to a therapist for problems like sleep or self-consciousness or anxiety. So like Elisa was just saying, the difference is that CAPS does have a therapist. So if a student is interested in talking to a therapist, they are more than welcome to go to CAPS. We do sometimes have students who prefer to come to SHOP first because we are anonymous and students don't need to provide any identifying information to get wellness coaching. And so problems like sleep is definitely going to be something that we'd want them to come to SHOP for first, so we can talk about it, maybe practice some sleep hygiene. And then if it seems like the problem is a little bit bigger than something a health educator can work on the student with, we would refer them to CAPS. So same things like self-consciousness. We do a lot of work around self-compassion, and kind of building up our own strengths at CAP or at SHOP. And then things like anxiety, it really depends on the type of anxiety. So if a student is having anxiety around meeting new friends, that might be something that they want to talk to SHOP first about. And then if we need to, a referral to CAPS.
We had someone asked what the Konthu is. The Konthu is our LGBTQI plus resource center. They do a lot of really wonderful programming. They've got a really great drop-in space, and they've got folks that people can talk to as well. And they also have students who run their front desk, so there's kind of a more comforting, open environment.
Someone asked if prescriptions can be sent to the health center if they are not enrolled in UC SHIP. I believe that they cannot, but you can always email. I put the insurance email for the Student Health Center in the chat. We have reached our time today. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions, but just as like a last thought, please continue reaching out to your students. They really do need your support, and letting them know that we have so many resources at UCSC to help them with whatever they might need. So thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate your time.